We are now recording. Okay, so um, I am going to stick within Photoshop and Photoshop only. There'll be no plug-in software used. Everything that you'll see is available from Photoshop CS6 and forward, which really takes it back quite a few years. So even if you're using an older version of Photoshop, you shouldn't be uh, really too much behind the curve in terms of tool sets. It's going to be really pretty simple. If you have questions and you want me to either go back over what I had just discussed, or you want to just, veer off to the side a little bit, stop me and I'm more than happy
How many
to.
people we have? 8?
I'm sorry?
How many people are there? 8?
I guess 8 of us, yeah.
There's 10 participants down here.
Yeah, Susan's on twice and John's on.
Oh, okay, that's
David's
right.
on
And
twice.
David's too.
I'm on twice.
So we're 8 of us.
Okay, got
Okay,
it.
so firing away, here we go. And just to prove to you all that I once had hair, I want to share this picture with you. Where is it? Here we go.
And how
Grass
will we
doesn't
know
grow
this
on a
isn't
busy street.
Photoshop?
This is a picture literally 50 years ago.
Oh.
The tall, thin guy is my youngest brother on his freshman year of college. The big guy standing next to him is my middle brother, Rich. He's in his junior year at Rensselaer. And the fuzzball in the middle and the lower case is me.
That's you.
That's me. The
My
two
God.
middle guys are nephews. I take no responsibility. But
I'm not sure, Bruce. I'm not going to share my screen because I've got one that would make yours look wonderful.
My father, who was a bit on the conservative side back in those days, when the 3 of us came home, each one, especially the first year that Jerry was away at school, the youngest guy, and we all came in with full beards and hair. He just looked, sat up in his chair and began shaking his head and left the room. It was not his level of personal grooming that he was comfortable with. But I just wanted to prove I did have hair.
Bruce, grass doesn't grow on a busy street, you know.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
No, it
You ever hear
doesn't.
that one?
That's my argument to these days, yeah.
Yes, my father had all the jokes, all the bald jokes.
Okay, so here we go.
Okay.
I am going to lose this picture and begin with this really lovely screen of a forest scene. In Photoshop, as you've all heard a million different times before, there's a million different ways to do pretty much anything. I'm going to show you the steps that I typically follow to edit my images. And I'm going to show from the very beginning of those images until the end, and some of the tools that I use and the blending techniques. The very first thing I do is I pull up a curves layer. Now, I am not a big fan of having too busy a screen, but some of you may have this adjustments screen on the right hand side of your bar. I tend not to use that. I prefer to use, if you can follow my cursor down here in the lower right corner, you see this like semicircle in the middle of these 5 or 6 icons. It brings up exactly the same thing in text as you see here in the upper left corner under adjustments. This and this thing on the lower right corner are identical. So I'm going to just kill this because it clutters up my workspace. You can also go into image and you can go into adjustments. Oops, sorry, got to put in a highlighted layer. Image and adjustments. And once again, you will see all of the adjustments that you can do in this lower section or the adjustments icon, plus a few. There's, match color, desaturate, replace color, equalize. These are not found in the adjustments tool set that I previously had in the upper right corner, upper left corner, or down here. You can see that we have certain filters here. So my method is, the first thing I do is I open up a curves layer, and I color correct my images. I always, as you can see, I have my histogram up here. Yeah, somebody was saying something.
Yeah. Where
Okay.
did you go to, where did you get the curves layer?
We'll go back again. I'll do that again. First of all, before I go any further and before I forget, I keep my histogram visible almost all of the time. Okay. I'm always concerned, at least in these early stages, these first few stages of the work that I am going to do. My histogram is, I watch it. Now, you can have a few different styles to your histogram. You can show all of the channels. You can show, which are obviously red, green, and blue.
Yep.
You can show them in the channels in color, red, green, and blue. You can show this. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to let's show all channels. Kill that. But I keep the one icon up here. I'm going to get rid of this compact view. There you go. I keep it on. Expanded view. I keep it here, and I could either get any of my channels up. I keep it on the colors, this on the bottom, so I can literally see how my red, green, and blue channels are clipping or not clipping.
Yep.
Obviously, in this particular image, everything is really very heavily weighted to the dark side of the scale. There's only this little bit of sky that's bright, and that's why you have very little data. You have very little information on the right side of the histogram. My first step is I bring up a curves tool. So going down to the lower right corner here, you following me, Donna? You see this lower right corner where my cursor is circling?
Yeah, I see.
Okay, yep. I click this half color circle, and it pops up this menu. Going back, I click this half color circle, and it pops up this menu.
I don't see the histogram. Am I supposed to see that?
Curves.
Only if you have gone to Window and you have checked histogram. Get in the habit of looking at your histogram in whatever you do, so that you'll find that you don't blow out or totally kill off, or blow out your highlights or totally darken your dark sections. I mean, for example, you see right above, right here in the lower right corner of my image, I have some really dark spaces where the leaves are deep dark green. You want to make sure that doesn't go to black, because I like keeping some of this detail in these dark spots in the trees. Now we're going to work on that to brighten them up a little bit. So once again, I open up my adjustments menu. I select curves. You can see the highlighted section, and it brings up a curves dial properties box. This properties box, as you can see, though in a somewhat compressed view, has something that looks very much like my histogram on the top of the page, right? Everybody good?
Yep.
I'm confused. I see this box that just popped up, but I still can't find your histogram. Am I supposed to be seeing your histogram?
You don't. You need to go to your window, right?
Yeah.
You see that drop-down menu.
Oh,
and you
You know
select this
why,
thing
Lynn?
called
The people are in
histogram.
the way.
But I can't get that unless I go to
Minus your people, so you don't see them. They were in the way of mine before. I bet
Oh, I
Move
that's
your
got rid of, I
people.
got rid of the people.
Drag your people to the
My people
bottom
are
of the
gone.
screen or to the right side of the screen.
I
And put
actually got rid of my people. But
That's
if I
fine
go to
too.
my Windows, nothing shows on when I hit Windows. That's on your screen. But if I go to mine, what am I supposed
Well,
to do on
no,
Windows?
you don't go to mine. Go to yours.
But if I'm in Windows, there's nothing. What is it supposed to say? I'm not in Photoshop.
you're not
Yes, you
supposed to do
are.
anything. You're just watching him, Lynn.
So I
Okay.
won't really see the histogram.
Okay.
It's all right. Go on.
Okay. So on this properties panel, you do see a histogram. You can see a red channel,
Green and blue.
green, and blue. What I start with every single time, I should one of these days, if I were smart, just prepare an action palette that would do this automatically for me. You see this little diamond on the lower right corner of the histogram right here where am I
Yep.
circling?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm a PC user, so for me, I would hold down Alt. For you Mac users, you would hold down Option, and you put your arrow on the diamond and you drag it to the left. And you see by holding this down, going back again, doing it, it's now a black and white screen. And I go and I place in the brightest spot on the screen a selection point. Obviously, I've done this once before. I'm going to kill this for 1 second and take off this one and take off this one. Okay. So I have now put a marker,
Yep.
okay, in this bright white space. I drag my little diamond back over to the right, peg it all the way to the right. Again, holding down Option or Alt, I click on this black thing on the bottom left corner of this histogram, and I drag it towards the right until I get a dead black spot, which is right about here. Once again, for me, it's Shift Alt, or for you, it would be Shift Option. Click. I have now another point. Okay. The goal of this is I've shifted gears on you now. One more step that you need to look at, and I always have on my screen. This is the info palette. It's right dead center in my screen. And you'll notice as I move my cursor around the screen, you see the
Values.
RGB numbers? Everything
Yep.
changes, okay? So if I stop here, this color that my eyedropper is on is represented in RGB by 10, 14, and 6 or so, depending upon my bifocals working. So the goal here is by moving my eyedropper tool around, I can tell you what the color representation numerically of any color that I rest my cursor on. For example, here, you see where I'm up in the white section, 250T, 253, 253. It's almost pure white, no detail. Likewise, if I go down here, you'll see the cursor is at, well, if I put it on the spot where I highlighted, it's 9, 12, and 4. Almost no detail in my deepest black. You follow what I'm saying? It's
Yes.
extremely important for you to at least consider doing this same step, because watch what happens now on this middle screen, okay? Watch this as I now go to my RGB channel, my red channel, and you see I'm in the upper right corner of the histogram. I drag this over. Okay, wait a second. I'm going to drag this over, click this, and drag it over. Whoop, sorry, the wrong direction. cut that out. I'm going to get rid of that. This, highlight that red dot in the upper right corner, and you'll see in the middle of that info panel, there's a 253 number next to red. What happens now is I'm going to drag it down until it goes to 242. Notice how the overall color of the screen just changed because I have changed my red palette in this screen. I do the same thing for green. And I bring that down to 242. If I were doing this in Lightroom, by bringing my brights down by 12%, instead of a pure white, I would at 100, in Lightroom, I would have 88. So therefore, you're removing any possibility of clipping, of clipping your brights on your screen. And I'm going to show you how that's adjusted in the histogram in a second. Same question, same answer. In the blue, you take that down until it says 242. And then I go over to the lower left corner and I do my deep blacks. And I move that until it becomes 12. Big shock. You know, it becomes 12, which is 12% in. The green, skip to red, same difference. And that's now 12. One more, 12. And the blue and the greens here, 12. So I have 242 and 12. So I have moved all of my information in from the right. Now, if you take a look at my histogram, you'll notice right here, there is no clipping. There is no information that abuts directly against either the direct left or the direct right edge of the screen. I have not lost any data any place on my screen. That's
Like
important
they
for your
made a
shadow
canvas
detail.
bigger?
Say it again slowly.
Is it like they made the canvas bigger around it?
No,
I
absolutely not. The
what
canvas is
clipping was.
exactly the same size.
Huh.
What you've done is either brightened your darks ever so slightly or darkened the your your brights at the most bright extreme, at the brightest extreme, you've darkened them ever so slightly. What you want to do by bringing your darks in ever so slightly up from 0 up to 12 in Lightroom speak, um, you would have detail once again showing up in your screen. So if you take a look down in this section, this lower right section of my picture,
Yes, you
there
can
is detail there. Those
Yeah.
darks now have detail.
Yep.
Though there's not really much bright detail up here because it's a big gray sky. Were I to have clouds, you would start recovering some of the detail in your clouds so that you get the nice patterns that we all know, unless it's a totally blown out day like this was, you would have nice detail starting to reappear in your clouds.
Bruce, can I ask a quick question?
Please.
You went from 253 to 242, and I forget what the original number was for the blacks. Are those numbers just arbitrary,
No.
or are they specific for this picture?
The,
How did you lower your blacks to the number 12?
your blacks get lowered to the number 12. Let's say I'll pick on the red channel here just because it's the top of the stack. Watch the screen. I'm going to take this back down to where it was, which happened to be 7. You can see it right here.
Yeah.
If I move this black side of my line all up and up. Remember, we're dealing with a 0 to 256 in 8-bit color. We're dealing with a dead black to pure white at 255, right?
Right.
Well, what I've done here is I've increased my red channel from what it was at 0 right now, or 1 right now. I've taken that sucker all the way up to 255. And you'll notice that there is no black. My red is pure red here, as you can see in this lower right corner. It's less red here. There's a little more brightness to this. But in this lower right corner, it's basically, bright red. Okay? So what you're looking to do is you want this to be dark. Okay? But you don't want it to be pitch black. So what I did in this image, because I needed to get it from where it was, I need to recover some of my details using the high tapping. Sorry, get it in order here. Make sure I do this in order. I tap so that this button goes solid. You'll see up here, I'll move it to the middle. Okay. Yeah. And right down here, if I tap my lower right corner, you see how this button up here goes to a circle? Yeah. It's hard to see on a small screen. Trust me, I'm working on a big monitor. But this right up here is hollow, is a small circle. There's nothing in the inside. To activate it and make it what I want it, I tap it, and now you see it goes solid, and I move that back up to where it was. So again, focusing on my reds on the dark side, I need to take this from the 8 that it's at, and I need to brighten it. And by brightening it, I need to move to a greater number, a larger number. So I'm going to, in this case, go up arrow until that 8 becomes a 12. Now you may find some situations where you're at 0. Okay, and this where you placed your point, your reference point. You may have to drag it, okay, or it may be a bigger number, okay, and to get it down, you'll notice if I use my right arrow, I am now making that number on the dark side 0. So I have no red detail. Look at how the color on the image has changed. Moving it back, I've added some red. Once again, with the right arrow button, I've taken away all red. Well, in my situation for this particular image, I want to increase the value, the numeric value of the red channel until it hits the number 12. So I've now added some additional brightness to my red channel, and I'm beginning to recover some of the detail in my dark red channel.
Now, all right, so going from number 7 or whatever it was, 8 to 12,
yeah,
that's only a matter of taste?
No, that's a matter to avoid the clipping, Jim. Okay. You want to get your outside edges into a little zone, okay, that is away from the edges of the image.
Okay, so you're looking at your main histogram then, and as soon as it moves in a little bit from the left and a little bit to the right, you would be satisfied.
Yeah, so for example, if I move my histogram like this in, everything goes darker, right? Because I'm going from where I was. You can see all of these numbers here are now 0. If I moved the red, green, the RGB channel up, these numbers are now much larger, and I wash out the image on the dark side.
Okay, I'm with you. Yeah.
Okay, so that's that.
Okay.
And it's exactly the same principle for the brights. So let me stop here. Any questions?
Really, really good.
Would anybody like me to go over that again?
Well, the only thing is, I don't want to slow anybody up, but I really don't know what a good histogram looks like. There's a...
Whoa, that's a good question. Yeah, hold on a minute. Do I have
Me too. I never used my histogram ever.
Because I know it represents, I don't know, whatever. I can't.
I'm trying to, I don't know if I have a good histogram up here, to be honest with you.
But you're kind of
yeah, you can see they're all different.
we're
But
doing,
I'll show you a good histogram later. I'll show you what I think I have an image. Which a good histogram. Okay, a histogram will, the shape of the histogram will depend upon each individual image that you've made, Donna. If you have a totally balanced histogram, if you were to think about a bell curve,
mhm,
Mhm.
you would have all of the information in the center
okay,
of
yeah.
this chart, you know, kind of like instead of this thing sloping down like this, it
Mhm.
would slope like this. You following my pointer?
Mhm.
Yeah, you're
But
heavily weighted to the dark side.
right now, you know, we live where there's forests. Now, for the sake of a conversation, you could take a picture out on a shoreline at the Atlantic Ocean on a bright sunny day. Your histogram would be the total opposite of this. It would
Opposite,
slope
yes.
down from the upper right to the lower left
Right.
because there's no real darks on a bright sunny day at the beach.
Mhm.
You got light reflecting at you from every direction. So a histogram, a good histogram, to use your phrase for the moment, is the histogram that best reflects the colors of your image. And if your image is too dark, you won't have any space on the left side of this between the you know this XY table
Yes.
on the x-axis. Okay, the x-axis is the perpendicular or the y-axis the perpendicular. I don't even remember anymore.
I
But on
think,
this,
the x-axis
That's
is
it.
across the bottom.
okay, thank you. So the y-axis is top to bottom. Thank you very much. If it's totally dark, you will have no separation in this grid that I'm pointing at
Mhm.
against this uh, uh, the y-axis. Okay. On the other hand, if you were totally bright on this side, again, no separation. There'd be
Just the opposite.
it would be totally opposite, and that is the thing you do not want because that tells you you have no information. You could have the most beautiful cloud lit sky, which has all, we know clouds have great and beautiful textures. But if you expose your camera so it's too bright, right? If
Mhm.
it's too bright, you have no detail in your cloud.
Right.
What you do in Photoshop or Lightroom is you attempt to bring your white point in so that you're making it a bit darker. Conversely, you attempt to bring your black point in to make it a bit brighter. If there's any detail in your image, because you didn't totally blow it out in the way you exposed it on the camera, you know, you didn't use 60th of a second at an f2.8, aperture where it's totally wide open and all the light in the world is coming through. You know, you put it someplace in an f8, f11, and you know, a 60th of a second on a daylight could be perfect. What was it back in the film days? For those who remember, was what was it f11 and f11 and you know be there or something like that. You know, you shoot a 400 ISO film, shoot it at f11, it would work every time. You know, and it would you'd have a perfectly exposed image. Well, we don't live in that world. We have control. So we control that through this histogram. And that's why my very first step every single time is I do exactly what I've done for you. I never change. So this
Okay.
is what I did. Let's kill this. You'll see now, okay, now I have an image. Let's move this back out of the way. I now have an image that has a little bit more detail, a
Yes,
little
it
bit of
does.
red going on in here. The first thing that I do is I combine these first two layers. I combine them by hitting Shift and then highlighting both layers. And then for me, I press Control J. For you Mac people, you would do Command J, and you can see I have copied
Mhm.
the first two layers. Well, they're still separate. Next step, Command or Control E as in Edward. You have now merged them together. Got it?
Mhm.
Richard, how did you learn this?
Self-study.
Okay.
I have said before, I was an accountant in a prior life. I did tax work. So my entire existence was about being told that there's a problem and being thrown at the books. And that was the best part of the job for me. I loved doing things like that. So certain of those traits are carrying over into this new life that I have.
Okay.
So this is what I do. The
You know,
reason I merge these layers together, okay, I can kill this, it's unnecessary to keep. The reason I merge these layers together, the next step I do is I put a very little bit of sharpening in there, okay? And I do that by going up to filter. You see on the top of this page,
Mhm.
drop down menu. Well, first, sorry, let's do this. Highlight the merged layer, filter, other, sorry, high pass. You get this screen. It's a really pretty medium gray screen. But you'll notice this slider here, as you move it from left to right, look at what happens on the slider. You start sharpening your image to a great degree. And to a certain point, it will become remarkably over crisp. Okay. Now,
Okay.
you may have other reasons you want it to be that crisp.
No.
What I do is I take it to about one, I sometimes just type it in, it's easier, 1.5. And as you can see here, there's a little bit of detail that's showing up in this box. Okay. Should I repeat that for anyone?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Hit OK. No. Now what happens, let's undo that. I want to change that. Let's do it up here. Do it up here. Hit filter, custom high pass. Okay. And now, here's what I've done. If I, oh, boy. If I do this and I hit this screen, I'll make it large. Here's the first blending exercise. Okay. First things first. I take this layer, which is now a high pass filter, basically medium gray. I go up to this. You see where I'm at? The normal. And I drag it down to overlay. So now this is the screen. This is the screen. You can't see it shift in the color. But where you can see a shift is if I take this up really big. Now watch the leaves when I disengage this layer. You see they got ever so slightly more blurry?
Hmm.
Original with the high pass filter. Just a little bit of a tick of sharpness adds.
Some people might say it's noise and they,
Say that again?
some people might consider it noise when you put too much sharp in it.
Well, I'm
No.
not, that's why this is very little sharpening, okay?
You just blew it
Now,
up.
and by the way, for clarity, I don't care about noise. Once upon a time, I shot film at 3200 ISO, and then I exposed it at 6400 ISO. So I could go out on a moonless night and take pictures that had actual images on them. You could count with your glasses off the amount of grain on that frame, okay? Personally, I don't mind grain. I don't mind noise. You know, back in the dinosaur age, we used to call it chiaroscuro. It gave a little bit of character to the image. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't like things so overly smooth and so precisely sharpened that they look digital. I prefer a look that has something along the lines of film.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
just do the slightest adjustment. No, very, very little to taste. And you know, sometimes 1.5 pixels is too much. Sometimes a half a pixel is just right. It just really depends upon the image because in this, it doesn't really matter. So again, we have now used the overlay blending mode. Now I could go back to normal and just to begin showing you what blending looks like, here's the first step. Normal. Dissolve. You can't see much of a difference there. Darken. Everything has darkened up, right? It takes your image and it begins to darken it. Multiply. It has not only darkened it, but it has multiplied the effect of your sharpening. And you could burn colors in, right? As if you were darkening specific colors,
Yeah, I like that.
right? Darken, you could get a darker color if you so chose, or now you'll notice this first section, this first box is just normal attributes. This second box, these 5 here, multiply, color, burn, etc., down to darker color, this is to darken. These sections here, lighter, lighten, screen, color dodge. What's color dodge? Brighten certain colors, right? Linear dodge, everything on a straight line, and color dodge, lighter color. These are all lighter blending modes. Shifting to overlay, overlay starts to darken. Only darks, soft light you can see is about the same on this image. We can shift down then to luminosity. And all we're doing is changing the brightness in this layer that we made. So you can see those colors, those things such as the leaves that have color in it, we have brightened them. We have made them more luminous. Likewise, we can saturate. It goes totally gray.
Yep.
Okay. You can subtract. You can literally, in this section, you subtract color from the image as a whole. So you have options. Now, you may be in subtract, and this may be the look that you want, but it may be a bit dark. You see where I am in the upper right corner here of this section, in the middle of the page? It says opacity and fill. Opacity. Take the slider down, and all of a sudden, you have diminished. You have reduced the opacity of the adjustment layer that you have just worked on. I'm going to go back over this all over again, so I do a repeat. Okay? Then there's also the fill. So for example, if you take this down, and you'll see that it lightens it a bit, but very differently than the opacity does. Okay, opacity literally shaves color. It just reduces the entire image. It's like, you know, you add more, another layer of paint to obliterate um, the pattern in the wallpaper underneath the wall that you're painting. So you can do blending here and here to get you to the look and feel that you want. It's actually quite simple.
This is
Let's
like
go.
100% mathematics.
It's totally math.
I was
Okay.
thinking of that too.
Okay. It is totally math, and certainly the way the computer operates. But fortunately, I don't have to worry about math because I never really understood this level of math. I work on it based upon how it looks to me. So I will literally, now I learned that for me, the best answer for this, um, adding in this texture through my filter, other, high pass. This is my high pass filter. Everybody okay? I have learned that for me, I go down immediately to my overlay blending mode, and it brings back the color and the darkness of the filter, and it reduces, takes the brights down to a level that is closer to my taste. Now, once again, when you're at the normal viewing level of this image, you're not going to see very much of a difference if you turn this on or off. You're merely going to see it in term when you get up close and you see how sharp your image is. Questions?
You,
Okay,
Bruce, do you do this mainly for every picture? This is the way you start
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, I do this. These are the first steps I do for any image that I work on, because Jim, if the image has brightness faults, if the image has color shifts that are inappropriate, if the image is either too sharp or not sharp enough, and then I proceed to do whatever else it is that I'm about to go do, I'm working with a faulty starting point. So I clean up all of my issues, areas, whatever, to begin with, and then I go do whatever else I'm going to go work on.
Okay.
Okay?
Just a quick point of view,
Yes.
and correct me if I'm wrong. I do a lot of my work, a lot of my preliminary work in Lightroom,
Mhm.
and there are probably a duplication of all the sliders for light, for contrast, for sharpening. They're all right there. The only thing that you are missing really is the histogram. But do you still advocate doing this exercise in Lightroom, or are the in Photoshop, or do you think that they're about equal?
You know, I'm actually probably the wrong person to ask that. I began when there was no Lightroom. I started, I don't know what number Photoshop, but it was more than 10, 15 years ago. Okay. Um, so I learned on Lightroom. I started my self-teaching exercise and I learned on Photoshop, I beg your pardon. I started my self-teaching exercise on Photoshop. So my evolution through Photoshop's evolution has basically been in lockstep. Now, Photoshop does many things that I won't even begin to touch because it's more graphic artist, and I'm not a graphic artist. I happen to be a photographer who uses Photoshop to process my images. Um, there are people who swear by Lightroom, but it depends upon how far you're going to push the Lightroom platform. If it's going to be basic adjustments, I'm told Lightroom is a champ. 6 different ways from Sunday. It works, period. If you're going to, somebody's got bells and I know it's not me.
It's
I hope
me.
it's not me.
Sorry.
Not me.
Not me. I think
Okay, it's fine. You know, at my age, when you start hearing bells, you wonder whether it's you or something else. So I was a little concerned. So I began, I look at this. So I look at this and I do everything in Photoshop. Now, I don't even use the bridge portion of Photoshop, which was the precursor to Lightroom. And Lightroom and Bridge are basically very, very similar.
Yes.
I started using Bridge because it was a way to categorize images and put them into directories and whatnot. And it has now evolved to have many of the same tools as Lightroom. I'm a Photoshop person, Jim. I love using Photoshop. I have no problem with it. I am sure you could probably do most of what you want to do in Lightroom. Okay. Now, the next thing I would like to show you is where we begin to make you a bit crazy. So first things first, let's disable the layer, okay? I am going to pick a color green. So I am going to go up here to my eyedropper tool and I'm going to pick a color. And I tapped on this leaf right here, okay? And you'll see down here, it's no longer black and white. There's a nice green color. Well, what I'm going to go do is I'm going to add a solid color. Oh, it's now, I don't want brown, it's ugly brown. So I'm going to stick with what I had here. This is green, okay? And you will see, soft light, let's make that normal. Looks like your favorite olive, okay? Well, we're talking about blending. So once again, were I to do nothing else, I could go up here to my little panel right up here in my middle of the right section of my palette, and I could start dropping my cursor down. And here's if I darken, I bring out the darks in the underlying image. I bring out all of the color but multiply them in the underlying image, noticing that the sky still stays the same color as the original piece. I go here to color dodge, starts to just dodge colors. Or what I chose to do is I went to overlay. Okay, I have done nothing. I am still at 100% opacity and 100% fill, right? Okay. I know a number of you have been working with gradients. And have any of you ever tried using a gradient in this way? Let's disable this again. You see here on the left side of my screen, in the middle, this key here that says gradient tool?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to select my gradient tool. Up here, I just double clicked on it, and you can see there's a selection of gradient filters that you could use. You could put in colors, you could put in types of color. They're really amazing, you know, the alternatives. But in terms of blending, okay, what we're doing now, we're just going to, I'm sorry?
Shades?
Not.
You're going to be working with shades.
Yes, okay. What we're going to do is we're going to select this tool, which you can see it goes here from black down to total nothing. It's empty.
Transparent.
Right? So now what I'm going to do is highlight my mask. So I put a mask here. Forget that. Enable. And I am going to take, you make a mask, which means you go up here, you go delete layer mask, fine. I go up here, I click this tool. You see it looks like a washing machine on the lower right corner here? Click that, you have a mask that shows up. I then take my gradient filter. I got a green here. I don't want green. I want black. Okay. Let's do, okay. Right to black. Let's make life easy on myself. Excuse me, beg your pardon. Change this to black. Click up here and click this.
Yep.
And now I'm going to hide and I drag. Remember, if you hold your shift key down and you drag a line straight across, you can't make it do anything but come straight across. If you look carefully at what just happened, take a look at the right side of the page. Right? All I did was create a mask across that right side of the page. Showing it in another way, shift, I'm going to come from the right side of the page. Again, you can see now if you look at this right here, I have a graduated filter coming in from my right and coming in from my left, and the center is as it was. So here's the original image. Here's the blended image. And now if I so chose, I could make it yet more modified. Right? And I could tone it down a little bit. Blending gives you,
Bruce,
yes.
question for you. Well, when you did from left to right, you chose a green and
Oh, I
going
changed
from
that.
right to left. Why did you do that?
Let's go back. So hit Control Z and Control Z and Control Z. Right. So let's just delete this mask. Get the right layer here. Delete the mask. Okay. I started out here. You see on the left side that I'm circling?
Mhm.
This is my foreground and my background color, right? These
Yep.
colors here represent the foreground and the background. I want this to be black and white. I originally had a green in there erroneously, Jim.
Oh, okay.
So I made it foreground is black, background is white. And you'll see up here, this is now black going down to nothing.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why the green was there. It was my mistake.
Okay. I'm with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so once again, I create a mask. Going to the washing machine tool down here on the lower right corner. Everybody follow me?
No.
Right down here, you see where my cursor is circling? Above the time?
No, I can't see that part on the screen.
You know, I
Okay,
have to make my picture smaller to do that. I went up to the top and wait, where it says view options, and you can make the screen smaller to 50% or something that we can see. Before I couldn't see this whole thing of his at all.
how did you do that, Linda, for the rest of them? Rest of the
Right
folks?
under view options, on the very top of the center of the page, it says view option. When you go view options, it goes fill the window, 50%, 100%, 150. You can make the screen smaller or bigger and it'll show more of the histogram. I had the picture taking up my whole screen. And now I can see the whole side.
Okay. Susan, I don't know if you can hear me, but I see you requesting remote control of my screen.
That was by accident, sorry.
Okay,
Ignore
good. I'm
me.
going to decline it. Thank you.
Take over.
Uh,
Give it to
Give
her
it a
anyway.
show.
okay, so once again, can you see the mask button down here in the lower right corner?
Now, and that's the problem. I've got that black bar across the bottom, which
Yeah,
is
me too.
can't
which
see
is
the
blocking out anything that you do in that
There
lower
we
right
go.
hand.
Oh, wait a minute. Now that just disappeared and then it came back.
Okay, can you see it, Dave?
Uh, I've got the black bar at the bottom that says participants, chats, share screen, but I can't see what's going on.
Okay, wait a second. I'm going to make this really, whoops, too much, sorry.
Should move it, that's all.
Yeah.
You can move that. That's little black bar you're talking about, right? Just
How do you do that?
clicking and dragging, clicking the black bar
No, it doesn't
and
work.
moving it.
Not for me either, Jim.
It goes for
Me
me.
neither. But I have gotten rid of it, but I can't now for some reason.
Did you hit the minus sign?
Well, that was, hold on. What was that?
Well, let's see. How do I tell you how to create a mask? Okay, so if you put your cursor on the green, okay, wait a second here.
So you originally did your eyedropper and then you picked a green color, but you corrected yourself in saying it should have been black and white.
Yeah, but that's something different here. You've got to be able to add a mask to this.
When you go to,
And,
oh, let me see.
there we go.
Go
Okay.
to layer reveal.
Wait a second. Wait a second. I think I've got it. Blending option, blending up. No.
When you go down to layer, add layer mask, reveal all. That's another way to put a mask in.
Delete the layer.
Well, Bruce, you could just shrink your Photoshop window and, drag the bottom up high enough so they can see it just for.
Yeah, I was
so they
trying
know that
to,
part.
but for whatever reason, I'm not. It's. Oh, this is really annoying the tar out of me. I can't understand why I can't minimize this for you. Oh, that's just a screen. Window, workspace, wait a minute.
How about under view?
That's what I'm looking at right now.
Zoom out.
No, that will literally be the picture. Fit on screen, that's fine. Okay,
You can't get to your little,
workspace, it's got to be in workspace. No, I don't want that. How do I add a mask here? Okay, here you go. If you see this green bar, there's just the green and nothing else, right?
Yep.
If you right click on that and you see create clipping mask,
Mhm.
okay. Oh no, that's the wrong one to do. Release clipping mask. Oh, I can't believe I can't do that to show you easily.
Hey, Bruce,
if you
Yes,
go-
sir.
if you can allow me to share my screen for a sec, I can show
Go ahead.
in my Photoshop. I
Do
got
it. So I'm going to release my share. Go ahead. No, stop sharing. Go ahead. You're up, John.
Okay, I've got a very, very minimal Photoshop window. Are you able to see it?
Yep.
Yep.
Uh,
So
areas,
it's
minimal, it's
basically to.
not even the,
Are you able to see my cursor or no?
the yellow cursor on the lower right corner of his
Oh,
screen.
sweet, you can. All right.
We can barely see
I
the
see
symbol.
the yellow
John.
cursor.
But I'm pointing at what Bruce called the washing machine right there.
Okay.
To me, it always looked like a camera, rectangle with the lens on front.
Yeah,
right.
well, I got used to washing machines. What can I tell you?
Oh.
Gives you a rough idea of what our life is like these days. Okay. So you click that. If you click that washing machine, you then get a screen. You see this mask that shows up? This is a mask.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, again, I have my graduated filter icon. I have my black to nothing grad tool showing. And I'm going to hold down my shift key just for yucks. And instead of going from right to left or left to right, I am going to go from upper right corner down. And I created a mask in this upper right corner. So make it even larger actually. It's pretty small this way. You see how bright this just got
Yes.
in the upper right corner? Disable, dark, original,
Yep.
enable. So you can then, again, you're in the overlay blending mode. You're blending with a graduated filter, and you still have 100% opacity and 100% fill. I refer you to
Wait a
the
minute,
upper. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but it's confusing me. Maybe I have it backwards. You know how you have I'm looking at the mask image on that layer, and it's black. You know where you it's black and then it goes to nothing, right?
right?
And it looks like white, right?
Go ahead.
I don't,
Gray and white.
when you say mask, which one is masking out?
Okay, think about
I
it. Go
don't-
back to the beginning. Go back to the very beginning of your Photoshop or Lightroom lessons. What does black do? If you paint black on your screen, what does it do?
Conceals.
Hides, okay? Black hides, conceals.
Oh, okay.
White
Reveal.
reveals. If you always keep
Oh,
white
yeah.
reveals, black conceals in your mind, you will remember that when you take a look at a mask and you see black, you are hiding a section of the image.
Okay.
You okay?
Yes.
Good. Again, to the upper left corner of the screen. You see where I'm circling my cursor right now? There are these 5 boxes.
Yes.
Okay? One box is the one we're using, and that's the style mask that we are currently using. It is a graduated filter from whatever direction we place it in to whatever. There is the next one over that again looks like a washing machine. Sorry, John. I can then draw a line, and I just placed a circle here. Okay, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to delete some things. Okay, gradient. Okay, and let's go back up to the add layer mask. I'm at a layer mask right now. I am going to go up here and press this box with a circle in it on the upper left corner of my screen. And I'm going to draw a line in the lower right corner because that's a dark spot. It'll be easiest to see. And you see, you now have a circle showing up, a black circle showing up on your mask, and you have a circle showing up on your image. Got it?
Yep.
Next, you can have, you see how this is a diagonal? And this third one in here that I'm circling, if I go up, let's say from the upper right to the lower left, it puts a graduated filter on only a section, in this case a diagonal, of the screen. So now I might want to, let's reverse this. Foreground transparent. Let's leave this as it is. Okay. And let's go up to, you have now created a triangle in here, right? So you only have this the right side of the page triangle. You see, you've added a color, but only by a very severe gradient. Lastly, just for those of you who desire some entertainment, I like this one. It is a gradient well, however you place it, but in the middle of your picture.
I see.
Right? Look at the edges of your picture. I don't use it for my work, but some of you might.
I can see applications for that, sure.
Right? And then, of course, you can go up here, and I added another curves tool, just something different. Let's go totally different on this. A totally different image. These are 2 pictures that I copied from the internet. Lovely Japanese drawings, right?
Yep.
This one, let's delete this. Lovely Japanese drawing.
Okay.
In this particular case, This is the original image of this woman in a kimono. I made a copy, as you can see from here on the right side of my page. I always work with copies. I never destroy a background. It's just a really good habit to get into. Don't mess with your originals. And you can see here, I'll make it 100% and it's at full vision. I have also added a curves layer to it because I wanted it to be brighter. But I added this later on after I did the following. I also increased, let's disable this. This is a famous painting by a famous Japanese artist of a couple of hundred years ago. The Great Wave. And you can see here on the bottom, there's a, sorry, where's my cursor? Let's get my brush. You can see here on the bottom, make this larger, right? There's a boat and there's men rowing to get past the waves. They're rowing through the waves. You can see another boat here. What I did in this image, I made a decision that I wanted to combine the lady in the kimono, right?
Yeah.
And with the lady in the kimono with the wave. The first thing I did was using that gradient tool that I showed you before on the layer with the great wave. And you can see how I began to fade out a portion. I can do it again. Gradient, and just take it from right to left. You can see how I'm drawing across. Oops, that's right. Okay. I am now bringing in more of my lady with the kimono. But I am going to soften this somewhat. Sorry, what layer am I on? I am going to multiply this one a bit. And you can see how my lady, how my wave is darkening up. And right here, I am going to darken that as well. Oh, I see what I did wrong. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Make that normal. Make this normal. Okay. If I went instead to overlay, and let's say I blended this down. Sorry, wrong one. I blended this one down a little bit. Now, Dave, I'm thinking about your dog with the glass-covered bookcase.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so if you think about what you did with a double exposure in your camera, you could do the exact same thing with two images that you took years apart.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So this is one other technique. I have found that, again, using the overlay seems to be pretty handy for most of the work that I do. But you should experiment, because if you go down to luminosity, you can see only the brights show up on the layer below. If you go to color, basically she gets fairly washed out and only the bright portions of her image show up. Saturation, you can see the colors shift. Multiply, everything gets darker.
Yep.
And then you can start adjusting vivid light. Gets very creative in what you might choose to do. So going
Bruce,
back-
question for you.
Yes.
Can you, on the right side of your image, you know, it's all the checkerboard.
Yep.
Can you use a brush with, let's say, the white to paint back in to bring that image back in? Is that a possibility?
Well, you could, but remember what happened. So, okay, let's do what you've just suggested. So I darkened this other image. I put a curves layer and darkened up the wave. But you'll notice I have also the reason that this, you're going to see this check, everybody know what the checkerboard is? It's where you have no data,
Yeah, no background at all.
no data, okay,
Transparent.
period. Now, if I went in as, I take my brush, okay, and just for the sake of a conversation, we'll change it to white. Okay, that's a problem. You can't brush the image itself. You have to go to the mask,
Mhm.
and you're brushing back in the portion. It looks like it relate. Well, it's impacting. Let's move her. What do I have here? 67. Let's make her 100%. Yep, I brushed back in that entire piece. Okay. So
Okay.
Jim, using your method, using your suggestion rather, if I were to brush, sorry, always make sure you end up on a mask. If I were to brush, I could brush back in underlying color. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of doing that because I find every time I do that, I make a mistake.
Yeah, but black puts it on again. White takes it
No,
off.
well, it depends. Are you dealing with the current layer or the layer below it, Donna?
It depends on, yeah, well, whatever layer you're
So
on.
if you want to use, wait a second. So let's just specifically hit. If you wanted to use black, you would hide more information on the current layer, right? If you used white, you would show more information from the layers below it. So just for an example, okay? Let's add a new layer at the very top here. I don't want to mess up anything. Undo this. Release the clipping mask. Release the clipping mask. Okay, Donna, so here I go. I'm going to take black brush. I'm going to change it to black. You right?
Right, you're just
I am
painting.
hiding. And remember, I am on a layer now at the very top. Okay?
Yep.
And I am just hiding everything below
Right.
it.
You're painting it black, right?
If I press the X key and make my foreground layer white, you see what I did? X. White and black go back and forth. So I make it white now. It now brings back. But you've got, oh, I hate this thing.
You must not understood what I said. That's painting what you did. But if you click on your masking layer and you white, but you take your paintbrush, white puts it on or takes it off, and black does the opposite.
Sure, take a look. What's
Yeah.
happening? I am
Yeah.
using the paintbrush and I am using white to reveal the layer
Yeah.
below the woman.
Yeah.
Okay? And or actually it's right.
How about going to the boat and the waves layer and see in the
Okay.
upper right-hand corner, can you bring back that picture?
Okay. So if I were to let's use black. Sorry.
No, you got to be clicked on the
Yeah,
layer.
I keep doing that. It's a common mistake
There you
the
go.
way that I make.
Yeah.
And you can see, and you
So
can
you
take a
can-
look here how it's changed things. Okay.
Right,
So
in the picture.
what I tend to do, by the way, Jim, when I am concerned about bringing information back in, if I go up to the top here, I take my opacity layer just about down to nothing. I reduce the flow and the opacity down to very low double digits because I find every time I go and do something, I make a mistake. And it's just so, sorry, it's just so easy to fix things if I am doing things in small steps. And I'll go back over it as many times as I feel the need. But, okay, so if I hide this, and you can see this is beginning to come back in. Everything Oh, geez, I'm on that damn layer again. I have just made a mistake, by the way, that I make fairly regularly. I warn you in advance, do not repeat what I do.
Mhm.
Make sure, you see this box here? It's bounded in white. That means the selection is the image itself. If you want to hit the mask, make sure the bounding box is around the mask, okay? Now, doing what Jim had suggested, I bring back the image details very slowly. And this is my preference, because this way I can shade things in. You'll notice I use a soft round brush. I do not use a hard round brush, as is my normal preference. A hard round brush, let's make this obvious, period. You know, you bang it in, okay? A soft round brush does it gently. And this way I can texture in whatever it is that I want to do. And that's why I use a soft round brush.
Okay,
Okay?
good.
Questions? How much more tolerance for this do you have? Can I keep going?
Can I see the original picture? I mean, the one you finished, the finished one you finished.
Yeah, I got to go back a few layers here. Hold on a second.
Oh, I thought you just click on the 0 or something. Or the 0.
No, I kind of messed up some stuff. So, gradients. So here we go. Good. So this is pretty much where it was.
No, I mean the two together.
Yeah, they are together.
I don't see the girl.
Um,
Well, what
she's
I
she's
don't
here on the side. Hold on one second. I'm getting her.
Mhm.
See, the girl's right here.
Okay, but when you had the complete picture, did you cut the bow out of her dress? Did you fade that?
Oh, no wonder it's doing this. Wait a second.
'Cause
Okay.
I just watched everything you did, and I would have a whole ball game.
See, I just made some of the girl reappear. Okay.
Because I would have put a white background on, then I could cut around the dress and the way, whatever. I would cut that out, that layer out. You know, the background of the girl. And you
Okay.
would see the way. See how you see the waves below the girl through the.
Yeah.
You see the waves through the girl.
But Linda, it's a question of what you want your image to say.
Yeah, I would. That's what I was wondering. You got the
Okay.
waves there. I was.
So for the sake of a conversation, get this out of the way. If I showed you what if I let me pick one. If I showed you one of, let's say this, I think I've got one here. Okay, yeah, good. If I show you this, take a second to load, big file. This is a file I worked on quite some time ago. And it will show you all of the layers and everything else that I did. And the only thing that's really important about looking at this file for the moment is what Linda is suggesting versus what
Well, I was just wondering if you were. This is what you wanted to see. You wanted to see the waves in the mountains be in front of the dress.
This is merely an example for you to decide how you want to process an image. I mean, you may have an art. I mean, look, Linda, you paint. How many different ideas go through your head as you're putting paint on canvas?
Yeah.
You change your mind, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, this is a particular image, and you can see these are all of the adjustment layers I did. And none of this for the moment really matters. This is the original image, okay? You see where I'm circling? This is the mask. And the black took out everything but this flower and reed detail, because I knew that what I wanted to do was to create a certain look and feel, ultimately being this.
Yeah, that's very pretty.
Okay? And you can see here there's various selective color, This one has normal, there's no blending in it. These are all pretty straight. Here I used my soft light again, a big favorite. Again, soft light. It just really depends, Linda. You know, like when you're putting paint on canvas, I find that when I work, ideas develop. And
That's how I am
the
too.
reason I use Photoshop, Jim, to your point earlier, is you can see from the right side of this page how many layers I have.
Yep.
If I make a mistake or I just outright change my mind about something, I just click on a layer, delete, modify, adjust, whatever, and I don't have to concern myself with going back and redoing anything. I don't have to worry about a history palette and figuring out where the right spot was,
Yep.
which, you know, I mean, it's Photoshop. I keep my history palette live here so I can see everything. It has more data, obviously, when you're working on it. So that's always active. But why do I want to hunt and peck till I get back to where I think I need to make the change to take the road to the left or the right rather than the direction I was on?
You
So
must,
that's why I leave all these layers in Photoshop.
you must have worked hard and long to delete those grasses in the original.
I have figured out that I have a certain level of patience. I've spent a day. And it's a surprise because in a prior life I didn't. I could spend, depending upon the image and what I'm looking to accomplish, I'm okay with spending 8 to 10 hours masking an image.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Well, it's insane, and certainly quarantine helps the attitude. Just
Mhm.
don't have to worry. So I can delete this. Now let's go back to the beginning and show something a bit more practical. Nope. Yep. Very easy image, only a few layers. Go back to the beginning. This is what the image looked like.
Oh, hey, Bruce,
Yes, sir.
I hate to interrupt you, but I gotta know, how do you click your layers on and off that fast?
I take my pen tool. I use
Oh,
a Wacom tablet, so it's basically a pencil-shaped device, and I just run it up and down, or run it up and down.
okay. So with my mouse, I'm not gonna be able to. All right.
Another minor advantage to the pen tool.
Bruce, can I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
I know on a Mac, John, I think you're on a PC, but on a Mac, I believe it's control, and then you hit the background eye, you know, the little eye symbol.
Yep.
And that will turn off all the eyes above it. If you hit control and the eye again, it turns them back on.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure there's a key combination that does that on a laptop as well.
Yeah, I'm sure
Well, I'm
it's
pretty sure the control is like if you want all of them. But
yeah.
I was just impressed by how he was selecting them without even selecting them.
It's a pen tool. I no longer really use a regular mouse anymore. Even if I'm doing an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, I use a pen tool. I found that it's just so much easier to use. So going to this, same old, same old. My routine is exactly the same. I do a curves layer, and as you can see here, I've done, you can see my blue, red, and green layers. There's some modification, nothing special. I combine it, into a merged layer. I come up here, I apply the high pass filter to create just a little bit of sharpening, and it's the slightest amount. What I then did, just because the mice were running wild in my head, I added red.
I like that.
And as you can see here, I have I want to make sure that I get this right. Okay. Delete this, soft light, normal, and no blending. This is what it looks like when you put a slab of red on top of all the rest of your detail. The first step I do is I go and I just, as to get a starting point, I'll go down to my overlay, Big Shock. But on the lower corner here, there's, if you double click on this fill, on the gray space, I'll cancel that. You see where my cursor is? There's no text. Double click. You then get a box called Layer Style. Blending tool. This is purely a blending tool. This is Blend If. And I can control, by using these sliders, I can control the darks and the brights. Now, what I've done here, if I click, I alt click on the slider below, you can see I am slowly fading. Look at the tree line. I am slowly fading the red on the tree. All this white to black is, if you look up here, you see 0, you see 255. It's always the same rules over and over and over again. Dead black, pure red, in this case, deepest red, is 0. And it's only red because that's the layer I've put on. Deepest white, you can see up here in the clouds, 255. I now have the option to move my black layer forward. Let's say bring it in, what did I do here? 32. You can see where the 32 is. Alt or Option click. I separate that black slider, and I'm now bringing the red to really starting to be intense above the tree line. Did you see how I did that? If I took this back down to 0, I could have a red tint here, but it's fading out as it approaches and goes past the tree line. All I'm doing is blending, right? Likewise, I can take my whites, take them over, and look at how my clouds begin to appear. From the layer below, I can bring my clouds back in. Okay, if I move this layer, I'm going to take this, I'm going to fade this just a little bit, like so. And fade this just a little bit, like so. And put a little tint there. So you can see I have reclaimed some of my tree detail, red tint. My mountains are back in view, including some of the texture. And I've got this beautiful texture in my clouds, which we all know is always there. We just have to bring it out. And what I've done is I've put a bit of a rosy sky in there. Now you could change that, for example, to make it color, pure red. You could make it, let's say, multiply, adjust things further, right? Red, deep red, make it some hellish looking scenario. There are alternatives that you can make. So I'm just going to leave this the way it is right now. I'm going to go to the layer immediately above. And what I've done is color lookup. How do I do this? Okay, I can do this up here, adjustments, color lookup. You see up here, it says color lookup.
Grayed out, gotta click
Oh.
here.
So here, do that. Layer, image, adjustments. Oh, this is curved out. Right here, let's try. Oh, better. Okay, made a mistake. Sorry, my apologies. Right up here. Layer. New adjustment layer. Color lookup. And I'm just going to pick something. Okay. This, you see this table that's now out? You may decide that you want to modify your image for, let's say, a moonlit night. There are some standard colors that are in this table, each of them providing different looks. It automatically enters into your screen as normal and 100%. Were I to do lighter, kind of interesting, I could fade it as we have always done. I could change it to soft warming filter. There are any number of ways you could do this, all of it including the same things we have always been doing. Questions?
Bruce,
Yes.
I'm going to bow out if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think it's 8:30. It's probably overkill at this stage.
Well,
anyway.
no, it's been extremely interesting. My wife and I want to finish up the
Dinner?
series of Homeland now that the last episode aired on Sunday night. So we want to finish that up. But
Okay.
this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome.
Thank you.